If your husband doesn't express his emotions or he just doesn't communicate with you the way you want him to, you have probably wondered before, is he neurodiverse? Just like my guest Sarah wondered the same thing. I mean, can you even have a playful, passionate, happy relationship with a neurodiverse man? Well, Sarah has that now. So let's find out how she did it. I'm Laura Doyle, New York Times bestselling author and marriage mentor, and I was the perfect wife until I got married. This is the Empowered Wife podcast where real women share exactly what they said and did to make their hopeless marriages playful and passionate. My guest, Sarah, was depressed, but also excited when she realized her husband was neurodiverse because she felt she'd found the key to fixing her struggling marriage after many years of trying everything else. But it was something else entirely that helped her make her marriage loving, passionate, and full of possibility again. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Sarah, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
Great. Well, let's jump right in. What was happening in your marriage? What was going wrong in the bad old days?
So in the battle days, me and my husband have been married 14 years, and I feel like it started off pretty tumultuous. Like we dated and were engaged long distance. So like our whole relationship was long distance. I was pretty young. I was early 20s. So all these things were like, oh, this is the reason why I married the wrong man. Like we didn't really know each other. We were long distance. We were from different countries, different cultures. And so, as you mentioned in the intro, I had what I'm calling like my false aha moment about 2.5 months ago when I first started connecting all the dots and thinking like my husband might be on the spectrum, on the autistic spectrum. He might be neurodiverse. And it was something I never thought. So, from that lens, I'll share like the bad old days from that lens of like what things he did that I was like, oh, that's it. He must be on the spectrum. So like we were long distance. And so in these neurodiverse groups that I joined, one of the terms they used is like love bomb. Like these neurodiverse men, they love bomb you at the beginning and they're so romantic at the beginning and then they just can't maintain it. So they just stop. So my husband is French and he's very romantic and just like swept me off my feet and was super romantic. But um, that went away during our marriage. And another term I learned from the neurodiverse community is like masking. I was like, oh, he was really good at masking his disability that he didn't know he had. And he was masking it from me because we were dating long distance. At every like encounter was like this vacation. I would come and visit him for 2 weeks and then I'd be gone for 2 months and then I'd go and visit him. And so our first kind of like traumatic experience that I remembered, we had already been married civilly. We had some immigration issues. And so we had gotten married in town hall in France, but we were planning like our temple wedding for our church and for our religion. And so that was something that had been planned like 3 different times because of the immigration issues.
Mm.
And in order to get married in the temple in our religion, you have to be living a certain level of standards. And that includes attending church. So me and my husband were long distance at the time. We're already married. And, we have a really religious, like we read scriptures together on Skype and we're talking religion and everything. And he's following all the rules, quote unquote. But like a few months before we were supposed to get married in our temple, I found out he hasn't even been going to church for the past year. So he can't really get the recommend to go and have this wedding that I planned 3 times now. And we're having it in Montreal, Canada, because we were still having immigration issues. So like my family on the East Coast was going to be coming up to Montreal. And I was furious,
Oh, yeah.
obviously. I
I'd
was
be mad.
furious.
I'd be
Yeah.
mad. Yeah.
Yeah. And that he kept that from me. And so I fixed it though. Like I emailed the leaders up in Salt Lake and got it approved. So we were able to have our wedding. And this kind of just set the tone of my husband messes things up and I have to come in and fix it. So that was kind of like a first kind of, and like from the autistic lens, I was like, oh, this is like an executive functioning thing. Like, how could he not be logical enough to think I was going to find out like this was coming up? Like he wasn't thinking about it. And so I went to there. We were still living living apart when I found this out, because I wasn't going to move to France till right after this. So I went and saw a therapist just on my own, because there wasn't like the virtual therapy at the time. So I just went on my own and, talked about everything. And she kind of used one analogy that I was a storm and he was a turtle. So kind of like I have a feisty personality. So there was like no hiding that I was feisty. So it was like, okay, you're storming and he's a turtle. So you storm, he retreats, and it's just a pattern. And the more he retreats, the more you storm. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but he can just stop retreating. It's a lot easier for him to stop retreating than me to stop storming, because like this is my personality and like I'm right. So he needs to like be a man and just like face me. And so that was kind of like the first kind of thing. And then I moved to the wedding did end up happening, and things were okay. And then I moved to France, and people always joke. So we lived apart our whole engagement, our whole dating. We got engaged really fast, but we were engaged for a year. And people were like, oh, isn't that hard to live apart from your husband the first year of marriage? And my ongoing joke was like, not as hard as the second year when we had to live together. And so like another quick story from that year, I just remember I was working in a school, and my French coworker, had invited us to Christmas Eve dinner. And I was so excited about it because, the French, it's hard to like them to let you in. And we were like invited to this family event. And my husband wasn't working at the time, and he was like just embarrassed. And so just like hours before we were supposed to go, he decided he wasn't coming. Like he didn't want to be there. And so he decided not to come. And I was mad. And like, I got to a level of rage so much that I was even like cutting myself. It's something I've never done my entire life, but it was just like an attention seeking thing. And he still didn't change. And again, from the autism lens, it's like, he obviously has social anxiety. Like, how can he not just like come to this event with me, seeing how badly his wife wants to go? And like, this just seems like an easy solution, just come. And so these were other signs for me. And then kind of throughout our marriage, we kind of had three themes. So money was a big one. And then lying, and often the lying was correlated with the money. And then like our interest in like living life. So like my husband's like very focused on becoming a billionaire, like not even a millionaire. He like has these big dreams and doesn't seem like he can live life, before he reaches those goals. Like he wants a private jet and things like that. And I'm like, I'm very ambitious too, but can we come down to earth just a little bit? And this was another sign of autism for me. Like he has these special interests, like, some people it's video games. For him, it's like, and so when I even first thought he was neurodiverse, I like literally within a day of even thinking of it, it may have even been the same day I brought it up to him. And the way I brought it up to him, I was like, Elon Musk, like he's on the spectrum. Like, have you ever thought that you might be? And he was like, oh, like I thought right away he would be like so angry at me for thinking about that. And he was like, I've never thought about that. And I was listening to podcasts and articles and all these things that just like kind of kept confirming it to me, like this lying to not get in trouble, and these special interests, and not being able to connect emotionally, and all these different things just kept pointing me to that. And the other thing with us is like my husband, he never tried to change me. He's just such a sweet man, never like criticized me. It was like he knew what he was getting into when he married me. It's not I'm not like someone that hid it for several years. Like I had my feisty personality. But I didn't realize how much it was impacting the intimacy, because it was kind of just like a joke, like an ongoing joke. We'd send each other funny memes about like controlling wives. There's so many like reels and stuff on Instagram. And now when I see them, I'm like, oh my gosh, these women need the skills. Because like, we just used to think it was funny. Like when I was a little girl, me and my dad did Indian princesses, which is like, I actually, so I'm from Southern California too. That's where I grew up. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Right.
I never,
And Princess is here. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I've never met Laura Doyle. Like, where's this lady been all my life? And then when I found out you're from Huntington Beach, I grew up in Mission Viejo, and I was like, oh my gosh, like she's been like in my backyard
Yeah.
my whole life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my nickname in that was Gentle Wind, so very ironic
Oh,
to my personality. So like my husband
yeah.
would call me Gentle Wind, like ironically, and even I would ask for feedback. I was like, can you just like stand up to me a little bit more, like criticize me a little bit, tell me when I'm wrong? Because I feel like if you would stand up to me, then I would, because a lot of women come on here and say, like, oh, I married my father. To me, I felt like I married my mother. Like I called, like the only person I've been as rude and disrespectful to in my life, other than my husband, is my mother, like particularly in my teenage years. And in my teenager years, I even called her like a doormat to her face. And I was like, if you could just stand up to me, I wouldn't act like that. It was all like, I knew I needed to change, but I also felt like if you just like gave me a little bit of feedback, if you just stood up to me, then then we'd be good. Like I don't act like this way to other people. I act this way to you because you're just like you just like allow me to treat you like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's pretty much what was going on most of our marriage.
Yeah. And so I relate to you so much, Sarah, like feeling like, it's his fault. Like he isn't showing up. He's such a, yeah, he's too passive. And that's why, uh, I act this way. If he wasn't so passive, that, yeah, I wouldn't have, then I would have to be responsible for myself or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly,
Yeah.
but I relate to it so much. And so and the lying about the finances and stuff, that kind of came to a head. I remember you writing about.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So a couple months before I even had the fake aha moment that he might be on the spectrum, my husband got intentionally fired from his job. He didn't even quit. Like he could have quit, but he got intentionally fired from his job, just like stopped, performing as well, stopped showing up because he had gotten really interested in day trading. So he was doing that just like on the side. But he really thought like, oh, if I could have access to my retirement fund from my job and if I could be free all the hours of the day, like, I could really do well with this. So he got intentionally fired from his job and he has back issues. So he was kind of out for back issues, or at least I thought he was. And, he his back probably was hurting, but he had gotten fired, weeks before I even knew.
Mm.
And so, this is an example of lying and to not get in trouble. So, of course, that was another moment where I raged when I found that out
Oh
because it's
yeah,
very,
so terrifying, right? Like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, what this is, yeah.
yeah, very upsetting. And so, tensions were high during that time. I was trying to be a little bit, a big thing is we had separated our finances like 4 or 5 years ago. And that was actually helpful for us at the time because I was so controlling of our money. Like I was controlling every dollar. He would just give me all his money and then I would decide what we were doing with all of it. And we have different interests. Like I have a lower risk tolerance than him, clearly. Like he has this high risk tolerance. So even though we're both ambitious, both really want to achieve a lot, he is much more of like the get rich quick and I was like slow and steady investor. So that's where we were having the most tension with money. It wasn't just like the day-to-day bills. And so we decided to separate our finances and I would just manage everything and he would give me half of everything. And then we were both free to do what we wanted with whatever was left over. And that was actually, a really helpful breakthrough in our marriage that relieved a lot of tension that we had about finances in the past. Also, if we hadn't separated, our situation now never would have happened because I would have had control of the finance. But still, like that, I relinquished control a little bit, not knowing that vocabulary. And so, where was I going with it? So he had control. Oh, so when I found out about this day trading, I was supportive in the fact that like as long as you keep paying me half, like that's all I care about. You're free to do whatever you want as long as you keep paying me half. Like I'm like a bank. If you don't pay me half, I'm going to start charging interest. Like I just need to be paid half of our half of our family expenses. And he kept reassuring me like he would, and like he wouldn't lose all of his money. He was going to only gamble like $15,000. If he lost any more of that, he would start working right away. And, but I was just always, it was a daily discussion, even though I said I trusted him with that. Like I was nagging him daily about it because I was scared. And then I found out, and so when all that was happening, that's when I kind of had the fake aha moment.
Oh yeah.
A couple of weeks before the real breakthrough. So the real breakthrough was, or breakdown, I shouldn't say breakthrough. The real breakdown was just a few days before me and my daughter were supposed to leave for a month because I'm in education. And so me and my daughter often travel a lot for the summer. And we were going to be leaving for a month. And I found out that he has lost all of his money day trading, all of his retirement. He was not able to pay me half of the finances. So like, and again, it was another lie because he had lost the money, a month and a half before. And so during that time, he's reassuring me that he's not going to gamble all his money, knowing he had already lost all his money. And he's just trying to fix it and not having to come clean, like trying to fix it before he'll have to come clean about it. And so that was, I raged again. And I thought that was the end. I thought we were separating for sure on our way to divorce when I found that out, because through the tough times, I kind of always like dabbled in the idea of us getting divorced or separated because he was driving me crazy.
Yeah.
He was driving me crazy. And I was like, but he's not bad enough. I felt like I didn't really have a reason strong enough to divorce him. So when this happened, it was like, here it is. Like
here's my excuse, I have this
no
justification.
reason.
Here's my justification to divorce.
Yeah, this is it. I have no reason to not divorce him. Everyone will, and like if I share this story, everyone will understand why I would want to divorce this man.
Yeah,
like, really bad.
I can hold this up as like, see why, it's not my fault. It's because he's so bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, I relate to you so much. But yeah.
And so right before we went on vacation, right before we left on vacation, we even signed some separation. We live in the state of Virginia now, and you have to be separated for a year if you have kids before you can even file for a divorce. So I was like, I'm going to be apart from this man for a month. Like, might as well start the clock now. Like, we just, signed something and found out it didn't even need to be notarized, but we just like signed something that we would at least be able to establish, like, this is the start of our separation date if we were going to go through it. And so
you're pretty serious about
this is I mean, in my mind,
anymore.
Yeah, at least the separation. I didn't know if we would like actually end up going divorce, but I was like, and we're separating, and we were planning on separating within the same house because we live in a very expensive area. Like there wouldn't have been like he was going to be down in the basement, I was going to be upstairs. Like the letter had it all lined out of like what our rules were for this separation. We hadn't talked to our daughter about it yet, so that was one good thing. We have an 8-year-old daughter, and we hadn't talked to her about it yet. But I thought for sure when I got back, we were going to be living separate lives.
Yeah. So this is scary. You think he's neurodiverse. He lost all his retirement money. He can't keep up financially. You are ready to be done. It's too scary to keep going like this.
Yeah.
And so you initiated this separation and had him sign, and he was like, yeah, okay, let's separate. That was his response.
Yeah, he even not because I've threatened separation other times. He's never really fought me on it because he felt like he always took all the blame too. He's like, you're, like I'm doing everything wrong, you're doing everything right. Like, yeah.
Oh,
which was,
gosh.
I mean, it was nice in some ways, but in some ways I was like, but I want you to fight for me, like fight, like
Yeah.
I felt like I was working so hard emotionally to fix our marriage, and he would go along with everything. Like we've done therapy, we've read books, we've had like couple time, we've had State of the Unions, like we've done it all. We've love language, we've tried it all, and actually that was one thing when this neurodiverse, even though we were going to get separated, during the separation, I really wanted to work with a therapist specific to working with neurodiverse couples. Everything I was reading, I was like, okay, therapy hasn't worked in the past because they didn't know I was married to a neurodiverse man. Now that I know this, like I'm gonna, get one. But they are really expensive. Those specialized, I mean, therapists
Oh,
are expensive in general, but those specialized ones. So that was, and even like I would have wanted to get him tested. Like I would have wanted to know for sure he was neurodiverse and get everything. And he was, receptive to this might be him. Like, I'd send him some podcasts. He's like, oh, that might be me. He even made a joke though. He's like, oh, all men must be autistic. And I was like, well, it is more common in men. But like to him, he could kind of accept that that might be him. But, and the spectrum is so wide, right? Like there are, my little sister is in a serious relationship with a man on the spectrum too. So that was kind of what got me thinking about it in the first place. And, yeah, so that was kind of going to be my last Hail Mary. Like, let's get
yeah.
a therapist that knows and understands neurodiverse couples. And if that can do it, but I was telling him, you need to fix it though. I'm doing the research. Like you need to look into this. Like you need to maybe like join some groups and get some support from other neurodiverse people and find out if this is you. And like, get the support you need. Maybe you just need to go to therapy by yourself. And um, yeah, so I was really pushing like he was okay with a separation, but I was like, but if you want to be together, like I need to see you fight for it. I need to see you try to fix it.
So I'll call it the fantasy in a way. Your fantasy was like if he works on himself with this neurodiverse and he gets like some coping mechanisms or some maybe medicine, I don't even know. Like
Yeah.
some there's something, then he's going to straighten up and then he can be the kind of husband I want to have. Is that
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. And that's what I was thinking until I joined these support groups. Honestly, I joined these support groups and they were all so not hopeful. I joined two. I said all these, but I joined two and they were just like, I joined those groups in hopes that I would hear these like miracle stories, like, oh,
Yeah.
I got the therapy I needed and then my marriage worked and everything. But, all the stories were just the same thing. It's like, it knowing that about and a lot of them were undiagnosed. So there weren't a lot of people in this group where their spouse had like an official diagnosis. So I wonder how many people are in that group and don't have, they're just not practicing the intimacy skills. So therefore they think their spouse, because now I'm still in the groups and now I kind of read, I'm like a little mole. I'm like, this would be like a gold mine for Laura Doyle. She needs to get in this group and like do a seminar. And
Wow. Okay, so it really wasn't the answer, the neurodiverse support groups or therapy or that didn't really it was kind of a dead end, it sounds like.
yeah, it didn't feel very hopeful. I mean, I didn't invest enough to know if I mean, well, I do know that it wouldn't have worked, but luckily I didn't spend a lot of money on it. So I'm
That's
grateful
good.
for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was soaking up everything I was reading in these groups. I was reading things and I was like, oh, this sounds so much like my husband. But I had posted a few, like maybe once, and people had like confirmed, yeah, it sounds like he could be on the spectrum or whatever. But I was reading a lot of other people's comments. And so someone, along the lines, because so many of these people were separating or getting divorced. And it was more of a support group for like, how do you deal with the trauma of having been in this relationship and how do you heal and come out of it and try to avoid the, like, I don't know, marrying someone with the same issues again. And so someone had posted like, I want to stay with my spouse. Like, what are some things that I can do to like make this relationship work? And someone had posted your podcast, just like your podcast, your name, and the Empowered Wife podcast. And I immediately went to it and I was like hooked right away. I was actually home in California when I read that. So I'm like walking on the beaches in Orange County, listening to your podcast. It was just so eye opening of everything I was doing wrong. Like I said, I knew I had this like raging spicy. One of our family, one of our couple therapists called me like a jalapeno, like a spicy jalapeno. I knew I had this spicy personality, but I felt like, but this is my personality. Like, and he knew what he was getting when I got into it. Like, that's not the cause of our marriage. Like that was not the cause of our marriage problems. That was all out in the air when we got married. Like, it was no secret.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
So, but you felt some hope from hearing about the intimacy skills, it sounds like.
I did. I did. I felt hope right away. I listened to the podcast, several episodes. Then I ordered the book and the workbook, and I started working through that. I don't remember if I issued an apology to my husband just when I was listening to the podcast. I think it was after I got the book, because the book really, the podcasts are more like stories like these, but the book really tells you what to do exactly. And so I got the book. Yeah, so I was in California, and then I was in Bali for my early 40th girls trip. I was on a girls trip with my best friend. So I was reading it when I was in Bali. And yes, I think I was in Bali when I issued the apology. And I issued the apology. Like, I knew it was going to work before I even did anything. Like, before I even did anything, I was like, this is it. Like, this is my real aha moment. Like, this just explains so much, because I knew I was married to a good man. Like, I knew I was married to a good man. I didn't, I saw his flaws, but I knew overall he was a good package. And I just, when I wanted to get divorced, I was like, I'll get divorced and I will just have a different lover every few years, because it's not necessarily my husband. It's the institution of marriage. You're just, it's love and fun at the beginning, but eventually you're gonna like hate each other. It was just like, eventually you'll bump heads. So, my husband's great in this aspect. I'm sure the next person I'm with will be terrible at that, but he'll be good with money or whatever. And so when I started reading the book and listening to podcasts, it was immediate that I knew it was going to work. There was so much just like resentment I was carrying around that was just immediately lifted. I just immediately had so much love and respect for my husband, just for putting up with me for so long. And I was away in Bali, but I was like immediately like more sexually attracted to him too, like right away, because my husband has always been, this was another autism thing in the groups. It's like these supposed autistic men are either addicted to sex or don't want to have sex. And my husband was more on the side of like, I thought he was addicted to sex. Like, how can you want to have sex with me when I'm like yelling at you? Like, like I'm so like, I'm so emotionally hungover and you want to have sex? Like, I don't even want you to touch me and look at me or whatever. And so, the sex life what hadn't been great leading up to this. But when I was in Bali, like we were connecting physically, like even like through the phone, because I was just like so immediately attracted to him once I knew the intimacy skills. It was like an immediate shift in our relationship.
So was any part of you though thinking like, why do I have to do all this? Like, why should I apologize when he's the one that just blew all his retirement money?
And not really. So when I issued the apology, I did expect him to be like, "Oh no, you weren't disrespectful. Like you have every right to be mad," and he didn't. And I was like, "What?" Kind of like, how is he just like saying okay, or whatever? He was really sweet about it. But I was like, how is he not saying that I'm not disrespectful?
Yeah.
Because for
Yeah.
everything he
Ouch.
put me through, I mean, I thought, I handled it the way a lot of people would. But it was also like when he didn't say that, I was like, oh, this is gonna work. Like this is the first like kind of eye-opening thing. Like I said something to him, he really heard it. Like I feel like we both were on the same page for the first time, and really understood it. Um, but yeah, in terms of, I mean, I still think, he's to blame for the choices he's made. Like they were pretty bad choices to make. And, I'm only
He's
2 months into
responsible
it.
still.
I'm still
Yeah. Yeah.
only 2 months into it. So we still have the debt. Like we don't have
Yeah.
like story turnaround financially yet, but I'm so hopeful that we will, because I can just see from all the stories I've heard from the podcast and everything that my I even got a SFP from a coaching call I was on last week was, my husband's on his own journey and he's going to come out on top. Like he's a smart man. Like he's not oblivious to the state that we're in right now. And this is not something, we've been married for 14 years and he's always provided for the last 14 years. Like I have no doubt that we're going to come out on top from this. It's just, he had to learn this on his own. And no amount, I mean, he's still interested in day trading. So he's still doing a little bit on the side, but no amount of me telling him not to do it is going to make him not do it. It's going to make him want to do it more.
And it would be stressful for you, it sounds like, to get involved, like to try to be in the middle of that, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't do any good. Wow. So I love it. So say you're SFP again. He's a smart man. Is that the
Yeah. Well, so I have a
self-fulfilling
ton now.
prophecy?
I'm trying to like write every morning, kind of like a paragraph and like, but one I heard on the call this week was my husband's on his my husband's on his own journey and he's going to come out on top.
Wow. I love
Yeah.
it. He's going to come out on top. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So you took some big, bold action. It sounds like you issued the apology, and now you've got some spouse fulfilling prophecies that you're leaning into and finding evidence for. What else? Any other intimacy skills that you have been implementing since you kind of had this aha moment?
Yeah. So I would say I've always been the queen of self-care. Like, I mean, I was literally on a girls' trip in Bali when
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I
true. You're
travel.
right.
Like, I take care of myself. I have even when I became a mom, like I was getting my nails done like 2 days after my daughter was born. So I've always taken care of myself.
Awesome.
But the self-care has never translated into a moment of rage. Like I've always thought like if I'm angry at him, it's his job to issue a sincere apology. I don't know if you've done this as the worst relationship advice of the week yet, but like the idea that you're not supposed to go to bed angry, like that was so ingrained in my head. Like I can't go to bed angry. So like if we're angry, we have to fight it out until we come up with a solution, which the only solution is you apologizing for what you did wrong to me. And so until I get that sincere apology, I'm just going to keep raging. And so it never occurred to me that like when I'm feeling angry that I should go into self-care, like doing it in the moment. So that has been a big thing. Another big thing, I'm trying to think of the skill it would go with, but something that made me cry when I was reading your book and I was reading it on the airplane was the chapter about like the way you treat your spouse will lead to like your children having disrespect. Like you shared how your the way your mom talked to your dad, how that kind of hindered your relationship with him when you were younger. And that just made me cry because my daughter is like me. She has my personality. And like I said, we used to joke about like my spicy personality and all this stuff. And she's exactly like me. So we would call her Junior Gentle Wind. And she is so rude and so sassy to her dad. But I was like, she's right. Like, go her. Like, is she standing up for herself? Like, maybe he'll see it. Maybe he'll see how wrong he is if he hears it from a little person. And I really, like it made me cry because even though as funny that it's funny in the moment, like we both laugh about it, but she really was being so disrespectful to her dad. And so I'm just trying to be a better example for her. And this is only a few months in. So she's learning from my example, but my example is still very new, and so I'm trying to correct her when she's disrespectful and be on his side more than always taking my daughter's side because I felt like it was always taking her side because she was so much like me. So I always thought she was right.
Sarah, I just love your accountability. It's so beautiful. Like, it made you cry because you felt convicted. Like, oh, I've created this culture of disrespect, and now she's mimicking it. And I just really hear your like empathy for your husband's. Um, but he's been long suffering. It sounds like. So this is like such an incredible transformation in 2 months and even the part where you're saying I'd be raging and I just didn't connect. Like I thought we have to just keep going until he apologizes. Otherwise, I have to keep raging until it's sort of like the flogging will continue until morale improves or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
actually so accountable. And I know it's not easy to get to that place where you're really just looking at your side of the street so big, like I hear you doing in just a short period of time. So I
Yeah.
just love that.
It
Yeah.
is empowering though. Like I love how you titled your second book Empowered Wife because when I thought it was him, I didn't really have hope. It was like, okay, we know this about him. He might be neurodiverse. Like, is he going to do the research? Is he going to do the changes he needs to make? But now that I realize that I have so much power to change it, I feel so much lighter and happier. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's almost bad. It's like I trust myself more than I trust my husband, which is another whole thing. But I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Like I got the discipline.
Yeah.
I can follow. I can follow
Yeah.
the guidelines. I didn't know. I didn't know the rules before. I was breaking rules I didn't know.
Yeah, no, but I love that. I mean, and so showing up with this self-fulfilling prophecy and like being more accountable for like the way you're showing up with the raging and stuff, and then issuing that respect, that big apology. How has this changed your relationship? Like, what's your marriage like now?
Yeah, so it's still pretty new. So, like I said, the
Yeah.
financial troubles are still there, but we are just connecting so much. Like I said, that resentment was immediately raised. So I was immediately physically attracted to my husband. When I got back, like we've been physically intimate almost every day I've gotten back, and it's been like a month. And this is coming from like, I didn't even want to touch him, and there's still a lot that needs to be fixed financially, but I still am attracted, like I'm still attracted to him. I still love him. And then kind of a story I wanted to share was um, on Labor Day. So on Labor Day, we were all off. So my daughter was off of school, I was off of work. And for years and years, one of the things I've always been hounding my husband about is he's really good about splitting the household work with me. He's really good about splitting the childcare work with me, but he's such a homebody. He would never take her out of the house. I'm like, just take my daughter, take her out of the house so I can have the house to myself and you guys can make like actual memories outside of the house. Like me and my daughter are very adventurous. We do all these things together. I'm like, her only memory with you is going to be at home. And I've tried like crying, I've tried screaming, I've tried like planning the day for them, so many things, like begging. And so on Labor Day, I just texted him in the morning and I just said, I can't take care of Sephora. Sephora's our daughter's name. I can't take care of Sephora all day. That's all I said in text. And he's like, okay, I got it. And I went on a walk and I came back from a walk. And when I got back from a walk, he was taking her to a museum. Like,
Oh my gosh.
like what?
This-
But that was all I had to say was like, I can't.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you didn't like find the museum online and send them pictures and say you should take her here and they open it this time and
Yeah.
here's where you get the here's how you do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he took pictures and everything and sent me the pictures because that's probably something if I had forced him out of the house, like make sure you take pictures. Like, I want pictures.
But he just took the initiative to do
Yeah.
all of this. So that was always in him, it sounds like. And now he's feeling like it sounds like he just feels like he can be successful. And so
Yeah.
he's doing what maybe was always inside of him.
Yeah. I'm just trying to create a lot of emotional safety for him to, be able to take risk and share. He's been opening up more and things like that. I,
Gosh, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great
before
job.
before the skills, I've always felt like it goes back to like if you would just stand up to me, like I have a lot of emotional safety. I mean, part of the reason I would act the way I would is I felt like my husband was going to love me unconditionally, and that's the same way I felt about my mother. Like these are things that came up in therapy. Like, yeah, I act like this because I don't act this way around anyone else because I don't feel as unconditionally loved by them. Like I feel unconditionally loved by my husband. It doesn't matter how ugly I get, he's still gonna love me. Which, you know, how many years was that gonna last? I don't know. But it wasn't. Even if he was staying, it wasn't a good relationship. So
Oh
I'm trying to
gosh.
create. I'm trying to take away. I'm trying to share that some of that emotional safety with him.
Yeah. And it just I mean it makes me really I don't know, it's very endearing about your husband that he's so loyal and so forgiving, so steadfast with you that there was like almost nothing you could do to drive him away. That's how
Yeah,
much he loved you. So it's actually it's a beautiful quality and I just kind of hear you valuing that about him now from this new perspective, which is
yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, amazing. What a transformation in just 2 months. How do you think it's affected your daughter, or has it?
It's well, yeah, it's been really good. Like I feel like she feels a lot more peace in the home. I mean, it's been a month and a half, and we've had one fight, I think, since I've been home. And I think we were fighting daily before. And as good as we tried to like not fight in front of her, she's she's 8, and so she's up late at night sometimes, so she hears it. And yeah, I think she feels, I think in some ways too, it's like a little bit of a transition for her too, of me not always taking her side, so there's like a little bit of emotional, breakdown there, because I feel like, okay, there's some shifts going on there where I have to pay attention to her feelings too, because I felt like it was me and her always like ganging up on him. And not that we're ganging up, me and my husband are ganging up on her, but there's sometimes like she needs to be corrected. So, but overall, I think and I know it's going to be amazing. I mean, part of the reason I wanted to stay in my marriage was, people say, oh, stay for your kids. And it was not even stay for my kids. I knew me and my daughter would be fine. That's another reason why I never separated left. It was like, I knew me and my daughter would be fine. I didn't know that if my husband would be fine. Like, he doesn't have like the friends and the support group I do. We live in the US. He's from France, and he's not as social as me, and he doesn't have family here. And I'm like, well, I'll be fine. I don't know if he'll be fine. And I love my husband too. Like, we have always loved each other. We haven't always liked each other, but we all have always loved each other. And so I was like, I don't know if this man is going to be okay by himself. So I have to take care of him. So I need to stay with him. But people say like, stay together for the kids. And for me, it was, yes, it is my kid, but it's not even so much for my kid. Like, I can't imagine not going to bed every night with my daughter in the same house. If we separated, we would be sharing custody. I'm like, I can't imagine having my daughter sleep under my roof only half of the days. Like, that was just something. Me and my daughter are so close. Like, and of course I wouldn't have wanted full custody because that's a lot of work. And I wouldn't have wanted, to take her relationship away from her dad because I knew he was a good father. But I just couldn't, that was the big thing holding me back from separating all these years. It's like, I can't imagine living half my days without my daughter.
Yeah. You bring up a great point, right? There's a really compelling reason to try to make it through
Yeah.
instead of having this separation. You're right. It's heart-wrenching to yeah, have half custody, right? Yeah, and you guys travel together in the summer and stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe he'd have her instead. You'd be yeah,
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a really compelling reason to pick up the intimacy skills and try to and not just stay together for your daughter, like with the fighting and stuff, but really to try to have everything to have your birthright as a woman, to feel desired and have all this passion you've created and to feel taken care of, and to have your daughter witness that, as I'm hearing, is a huge benefit.
Yeah. I really feel like the three of us are a team now, and it's going to be, you know, as soon as she's old enough, I'm going to be teaching her this stuff too.
That's right. She's already kind of
Yeah.
seen it model. They're little mimics, right? At 8, they're such mimics. So she's
Yeah.
definitely going to see the modeling and be able to recreate that for herself in the future too. So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So, well, what's your tip for somebody who is where you were, where you're just feeling like separation, you're wanting a separation because this is the last straw, like he's really done it this time. And maybe it's a financial disappointment or some other kind of, I don't know, betrayal, where she's feeling hopeless or she's feeling like he's got an undiagnosed, I guess, neurodiversity, whatever it is. And she wants what you have now, where they are passionate every day. She's in love with her husband. She's really, and she knows he's a great father. And you just feel like there's such a bright future because you're empowered to create it that way. What's your best tip for her? What should she do if she wants what you have
Um,
now?
I would say practice the skills first, like before you make jump to any conclusion. Definitely practice the skills and see if all your thoughts about your husband doing everything wrong go away. I would say definitely like faith over fear. That's been a big quote that I've heard in the past, but a lot in your book and your podcast um, and program. So yeah, faith over fear is a big thing, like holding me down right now. And then just don't compare either. Like, don't compare your husband or partner to someone else, because everyone everyone is on their own journey. So definitely try to resist comparing and just take it like one day at a time. Like, don't rush into anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you sure you seem like such a girl of fun and light to me, Sarah. So I really feel there's this lightness about you. And I can't imagine like when you were in that separation. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you were still light then too, but there must have been some heaviness around that. But what do you
Yeah.
think you would say to Sarah if you could go back and tell her what you know now?
Oh, I mean, I just wish I would have found this book earlier. I read so many other books that helped a little bit, but probably hurt more than they helped. But yeah, I mean, similar, like don't compare your husband. I feel like I was doing that a lot. I feel like I was comparing him a lot to other friends' husbands, to, previous people I had dated and things like that. And just coming back to like, oh, I made the wrong choice. And gratitude, self-fulfilling prophecy. I've always been a big believer in like manifestation, but I never thought about applying it to my spouse. I just always like applied it to myself and the things I was working on. But now I see just, I mean, I really do think I created a lot of these financial issues like we're having right now. Like, yes, it was his choice and his responsibility, but I know for sure he wouldn't have at the very least he wouldn't have kept it a secret from me if I had created a more emotional safety. So it might have still happened, but I would have known about it sooner. And we would have been able to, I think he would have leaned on me more instead of trying to keep everything from me. So yeah, that's what I would
Wow. That
recommend.
is extraordinary accountability. So what I hear you saying is like you focused on like you had a lot of fear around the finances and that focus kind of created the situation that you found yourself in, even though I mean, like you said, it was such justification. You could point to it and say, see, he lost all the money. And I hear you saying like, yeah, I had a part in that.
Yeah. I mean, I told him he was terrible with money all the time. So I feel like I manifested that. Like I feel like I brought that to life. I, you know, ingrained that so much into the universe and into his mind. I'm sure it hurt his ego and things like that. And yeah, I just really feel like I was so rude about it. Like I consider myself pretty good with finances. So it was always like, I'm smarter at this. Why? Like, you should appreciate, like, not every man has a wife that understands personal finances. Like, I understand it. Like, why don't you just listen to me?
Yeah. And you're laughing about it now, but that is really so humble and
Yeah.
so yeah, so accountable. So I mean, that's amazing. I'm super impressed. And I just want to congratulate you because what you've done is create like a secure, happy family where there was a separation. There was like a risk of it all coming apart. And I do hear you choosing your faith over your fear. So I just want to give you my Best Wife award, which I think
Oh,
you richly deserve for being so self-aware and accountable and humble and disciplined about using the skills like at every turn to create this happy family. So well
oh,
done, Sarah.
yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling very hopeful. Like we've reconciled from what I thought would be a separation before, but this is the first time where I feel like this is the last time. I don't feel like that threat isn't gonna haunt us anymore.
No, no, you seem like a ridiculously happy wife to me. So- and I just love it. Well, this has been very inspiring and so instructive too about how to change your marriage so quickly, right? Just a couple of months in. Yeah, you are an inspiration. So thank you
Oh,
so much for sharing.
thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the book. Thank you for doing all the research. Thank you for sharing it. Yes, I'm definitely going to be sharing it with lots of friends.
I love it.
And
Yay.
my husband doesn't know about this, so I'm not going to be sharing this podcast with him for like
Now,
years because he doesn't even know about any of this.
I'm not going to tell him. So it'll be our secret. I love it. Yay. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed hearing the real life story of how Sarah made her hopeless marriage playful and passionate again, then subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. On next week's podcast, we're going to talk about how to live with an emotionally distant husband and what you can do to have him pull close to you, have deep conversations, and feel like a magnet to steel. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that we get so many deliveries around here that I'm just waiting for Amazon to congratulate us on opening our own fulfillment center. For more on how to make your marriage playful and passionate without his conscious effort, even if it seems hopeless right now, check this out.